Je te souhaite la bienvenue sur mon podcast Off the Mat. Mon intention est de te partager ici les clés précieuses que j'ai reçues du yoga pour apprendre à m'aimer, reprendre confiance en moi, cultiver mon équilibre et ma paix intérieure chaque jour. Je te souhaite la bienvenue chez toi. Victoria's passion for movement began in New Jersey, where she started classical ballet at the age of 4 and trained on a professional track before she injured herself. After struggling for years with her health, she was ultimately diagnosed with lupus. In 2012, she took her first yoga class and experienced that forever changed her life. In 2019, she completed her 300-hour yoga teacher training in New York. Victoria believes in the mind-body benefits of yoga. Today, she lives to share it through teaching, education, and content. In this special episode, Victoria shares her journey from ballet to yoga and how this practice has been helping her to overcome mental and emotional struggles, supporting her best physical health while managing lupus. Victoria, I am so happy to have you on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
So Victoria and we've been in touch for quite a while now. Okay, a little bit of backstory. That was not planned, but a little bit of backstory. Victoria is, I think, one of the first yogi that I've been following on Instagram. She knows already, but she's been one of the first yogi that I've been following on Instagram when I started my yoga journey, and I was not even doing anything like content purpose on my own Instagram, but I was so inspired by your practice and your beautiful back bends, and I will always remember that big picture of you at the aloe store in Soho doing, I think it was a lunch back bends or pigeon back bends or something. I was always so admiring this. I've never really had a beautiful back bends when I started, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I one day I can do that, I'll be a star just like her. So I think you're the star.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Likewise, I've been admiring your practice from afar long before we started even communicating, and have just admired your handstands and your back bends and your aesthetics and really just everything. You've been a true inspiration. And so now that I can call you a friend is even more special.
Yes, and soon we're gonna renew to have more matcha. So the first time that we met in person with Victoria was last year, actually. So we're in 2025 right now, and it was in September 2024 when I traveled to New York. And this year again, we're gonna meet again, which is really exciting. Victoria, I really want you to share about your story because Victoria has such a beautiful and inspiring story, and I am so blessed to have you on the podcast to share this story, and I'm sure it's going to inspire a lot of the people that are listening to us today. Could you start sharing a little bit about your journey into movement more in general? Because Victoria, you actually started with dancing, so...
Yes. At the tender age of 4 years old, I started dancing classical ballet. And of course, at that time, we're just running around in circles, pretending to be a butterfly. It's not actually anything serious. But over the years, I developed a true passion for it. And there was a point in time where I actually wanted to stop dancing. And my parents would not allow me to do so. They were like, no, you're going to stick with this. You'll thank us later. And I thank them immensely to this day. My training intensified. By middle school, I think I was practicing almost every day after school. So I didn't really have a massive social life at that time. It was just schoolwork, straight to ballet, straight home to do my homework, and then do it all over again the next day. And by the time I got into high school, I was training at a pre-professional level. And so at that time, I started spending my summers in New York City. I grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, dancing with students from American Ballet Theater, at their summer intensives, and it became something that I actually wanted to make a career. And my parents weren't always on board with that thought process. They were very much academically inclined, and I was a straight A student, and I think a lot of that ballet discipline spilled over into my schoolwork. And so I was very much a perfectionist. And unfortunately, I had a knee surgery when I was 16. And so it kind of derailed my plan of wanting to dance professionally. And at that time, even today, it's still very hard to become a professional dancer, but also being a woman of color, the opportunities weren't as abundant as they were for my peers. And my parents at that time really encouraged me to focus on schoolwork. So I managed to recover from knee surgery. I don't think I ever recovered 100%, even to this day. Um, but I kept dancing and I focused on my schoolwork, and I ended up applying to college and went to Dartmouth College, which was an amazing experience, also very challenging at times. When I first embarked on college, I stopped dancing. They didn't have a classical ballet program, and so I decided that if I can't dance classical ballet, I'm not going to dance at all. But I shortly changed my tune and joined the Dartmouth Dance Ensemble, which was a little bit more of a modern and contemporary type of flair. But after becoming friendly with the artistic director of the program, they started incorporating a little bit more classical ballet just for me. And so I ended up dancing with the ensemble for 3 years. And I'm so glad that I did because it changed everything. I'm someone who needs a lot of discipline in my life. I need a very busy agenda in order to thrive, and joining the dance ensemble gave me that. So my grades went up, and I just became more productive and constructive and kind of back to the way that I was in high school. But upon graduation, I kind of stopped dancing again. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I ended up moving to California, Santa Barbara, and there happened to be a dance school at the UCSB campus. And so I decided to start taking some dance classes there. And so I practiced regularly, but again, I wasn't training anything in particular. The dream of becoming a professional ballerina was dead. And I continued dancing there throughout the summer, which was quite lovely. This is now 2008, so I'm dating myself. I am much older than I appear. And after a tragic incident, I put down my ballet slippers and I kind of put down everything. I lost my best friend to suicide. And sorry, every time I talk about it, it just kind of brings up a lot of emotions for me. And so she came to we had a performance at the end of the summer and she came to it. And that was like one of the last few times that I ended up spending any time with her. And so after she passed, I stopped dancing completely. Spent the year in California against my better judgment. I should have come home. But I finally did make my way back to the East Coast, and I embarked on no movement whatsoever for a couple of years. And I realized I was going down a dark rabbit hole in which I really needed to pull myself out of. I was moving into extracurricular activities that were not very useful for me. I picked up a very bad alcohol addiction and realized that, I need to figure this out and I don't know what it's going to take. And so eventually I decided, let's try yoga. I walked past a hot yoga studio one day after leaving work. And at that time I was working in finance. not really the job for me. I'm not really sure how I ended up working in finance, but I did. And I found this hot yoga studio, which was yoga to the people. And I decided that the next day I'm going to take class. So I grabbed some workout clothes and I took class the next day and I was hooked. My very first teacher was Talia, who I admire immensely. I attribute a lot of her passion and dedication as a teacher uh, to my journey, to why I am where I am today. And she was very pivotal in all of that. And so once I started taking classes, I started to change my lifestyle. I felt a lot happier. I felt back to myself. I didn't realize at the time how much I needed movement in order to feel like myself. And not that ballet defined me or that yoga defines me now, but there's something about the movement structure and just the mental focus and consistency and stability that the practice gives me that made me feel like a human again and made me feel whole as an individual. And so I guess that's it. I just kept practicing. And it's what, 14 or 15 years later now. And I've turned my passion for yoga into a career. I didn't really go into yoga having the goal of deepening my practice to an extreme level. But I think coming from a ballet background, and having some perfectionist tendencies that I'm still trying to work on, it really encouraged me to focus on deepening my practice. I ended up doing a lot of competitive yoga for a while, which it's not as popular as it used to be, but it was something that was popular at that time here in the States. And so I competed in New York for the regional competitions, and then there were national competitions and there were international competitions, and I enjoyed them. I think that it was something for me that reminded me a lot of the competition that was in ballet. Although in ballet, you're competing against your peers for the perfect role, or, the lead role, I should say. And in yoga, it's more of a competition within yourself. Every time that I competed, I realized mentally, even though physically I was very sound and had, perfect standing bow and perfect tiger scorpion and everything was perfect. But when I got on that mat and the clock started and I'm standing in front of a panel of judges, my mind just couldn't tap in. So I realized that more than anything, it wasn't the competition. It was a lot of mental work that I still needed to do in order to be and perform my quote unquote best practice during those competitive moments. And finally, in 2019, everything clicked after many years of, journaling, thinking about what's holding me back. Why don't I feel like myself? Why am I not speaking my truth or being my most authentic self? I think for a while I hid behind a facade of people pleasing, and never really stepped into my true journey. And once I started to let go of the people pleasing and speak up for myself, everything started to make more sense on my yoga mat. So my last competition was in 2019 and I made it to the international competition. So I went to Beijing to compete. Um, I didn't do that great. I didn't I didn't give myself enough time to acclimate to the time change. And so by the time I got there, my body wasn't ready to do anything besides rest. But of course, I showed up anyway and did what I had to do, and then just enjoyed the rest of my time in China and kind of promised myself that I would never compete again. After that, I realized I had gotten to the international competition. There was nothing more that I needed to achieve. There was nothing I had to prove to myself or prove to anyone else. And I really just wanted to kind of internalize my practice a little bit more and not necessarily be like such a big focal point as far as competition goes. Um, but all of that to say, during that time, I picked up a chronic illness. And so there were times where I kind of stepped away from my practice because I physically didn't have the ability to do anything besides lay down and rest, which was really devastating. And during that initial time of my diagnosis, back in 2016, I realized how much my yoga practice meant to me and how much I needed it in order to feel good about myself mentally and physically. I realized without my practice, I just don't really know. I kind of feel lost in some sense. And every time I step on my mat is when I feel at peace. This is a term you've used quite a bit, but safe space. It just truly feels like my safe space and like where I can address anything that's going on with me mentally or physically and just make peace with it. And so, yoga now for me, more than like a movement meditation, it's really more of a mental meditation where I can find that inner peace and calm and inner self love, which has taken me a very, very long time to develop. And it's still a work in progress, and it will always probably be a work in progress. But my journey with movement has been all over the place and has really been the one thing that has probably kept me alive. I think that there are many times where I have fallen fallen off the horse and fallen down into a deep dark hole, and it's my yoga practice and everything that it gives me that has brought me back to the surface and brought me back to normal and brought me back to life. So I'm very grateful for the practice. So are my parents to that point, because there were many times I feel like that they could have lost me throughout the years. And movement really is everything to me. I don't know where I would be without it. So something that turned into an initial passion and hobby has now become all consuming, but in a very healthy way. I have a very good balance on how much movement I can take versus, when I need to rest, but it has really been a lifeline for me.
That was beautiful listening to you. It's such a beautiful. There's so much that I didn't know about you. Like, it's just, even if we met several times, like, there is like a whole journey because Victoria is turning 40 next month. And I know I know many of you that are listening know actually Victoria and her practice that is just beyond. And when you know that at the age of 40, like the physical age of 40, you can do all of that after everything that you went through, I think it means a lot about how movement can be healing if we choose movement to be our friend instead of our enemy, because a lot of people consider movement as a punishment or something that they should do, like working out. You should be working out to feel good about yourself and all of the things. And I think yoga is such a beautiful practice because like when you mentioned about competition, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I've never had that before. And especially because I feel like it's so opposite to what yoga actually is. I really see yoga as an individual and personal practice, whereas when you're competing, there is like something more masculine that comes into game. How, like, I'll be super curious to know how you've had, or maybe not, had to adapt your practice throughout the years, throughout the emotional struggles, but also the physical stuff that you went through. How did you adapt your physical practice to stay so like incredible? I mean, your practice is just beyond. Can you at least realize that?
It's honestly a miracle because sometimes I wonder, how and why. Um, because back in 2016, when I started to get some of my initial lupus symptoms, I had to take a break from yoga completely. And it was in the middle of a competition where I realized, something is devastatingly wrong. Um, we were in Jackson Hole, Wyoming for the national competition. And, everyone's rooting for me. They're like, you've got it this year, top three finish. And I'm mentally like, yeah, I can do it. But physically, my body's like, you need to lay down. Like, I had an insane fever at the time. I had all of these mouth ulcers. So my mouth felt like it was on fire. I had the worst night sweats every night. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was extremely sensitive to light. And so when I got on stage and the bright lights came on, like the spotlight, I blacked out. Everything faded to black. I could not see a thing. I was like trying to do the routine and basically collapsed on stage. I realized at that time I needed to take myself out of the yoga room, out off of the stage, go home, see doctors, figure it out because I knew something was wrong. I mean, my body just wasn't operating at the same level anymore. And I had to take a break. I think after that competition, I didn't go back into the yoga room for about 2 months. And I physically couldn't. And I had to make peace with it. And it was killing me on the inside. But what was also killing me were these initial symptoms, and I had no idea what they were. And finally, it was actually my 31st birthday where I got the diagnosis that I have lupus nephritis. And apart from all of the, superficial, visible things that were happening as far as my hair falling out and, all kinds of inflammation and whatnot, I asked them, will I be able to practice again? Because at that time I was losing my motor skills. I had a hard time walking. Um, my father and family members had to help me get from point A to point B all of the time, and I was constantly blacking out. And so I just couldn't figure out if, I would have to explore other movement options. But thankfully, they told me, no, you'll, get back to your practice. It might not be the same, but you'll get back to it. And I think just because I spent so many years prior to my diagnosis practicing, and then I had all of those previous years of ballet training, that at the end of the summer, when I got back into the yoga studio, my practice came back. I mean, just not that it was seamless and, perfect, but I was able to get through a 60, a 90-minute class, and it was starting to get back to the level that which I was prior to having to take a break. And so I was very grateful for that. And I needed to build a lot of strength. Every time I get some sort of flare or have some sort of big health issue, I lose all of my strength. I just become very slender. I lose all of my muscle and I have to work to build it back. And so I was very flexible, but I had no strength at the time. But to be honest, it didn't really matter. I was just happy to be back on my mat and moving my body again. And at that point, once I returned to my practice, I realized that my journey with yoga was going to be pivotal in managing my symptoms because yoga cultivates such a strong mind body connection that every time there was just one little thing wrong with my body and I couldn't, let's say do full camel how I normally do, I could tell myself something is off, and I would call my doctor, tell him I need to get some labs done or something. They're like, no, you're fine. I'm like, I am not fine. I know my body and it is not operating how it normally does. And so to that point, yoga has been very helpful in that regard. Has been very helpful in that regard. And I just have to find the balance with it. You know, some days my body just tells me, no, this isn't happening. And I have to honor it. As much as I'd love to get up and go take a 90-minute class, it's not worth it because when I push myself too much, that's when I end up getting sick. And that's when I have to spend multiple weeks in bed versus a day or two. So I've learned to scale things back, even though that's not in my nature, not in my personality. And 2023 in particular was very challenging because my whole body transformed. I had a very bad flare in the beginning of the year and I gained 35 pounds of fluid. So I was carrying like all this extra weight. None of my clothes fit. None of my shoes fit. The only thing I could wear were Accolade sweats every single day. And I tried to work out, but really I was just doing myself a disservice because nothing at that point, no amount of movement was going to help me shed this 35 pounds of fluid. And mentally, I think just because of my former dance years, I'm like, oh, if I work out, it will fall off. You know, the weight will disappear and I'll get back to normal and feel normal. There was nothing I could have done that would have gotten that weight off. It was my heart that was the issue. And after a battery of tests, they realized I needed to have heart surgery. Uh, so I didn't really practice much the year of 2023. There were a couple spurts here and there where everything was back to normal because of medication that I was taking. And I would get a couple of practices in and then I would have to stop again because the same symptoms would keep coming back. And at the time, nobody realized that it was happening because of my heart. So I go to have the consultation before my heart surgery, and the doctors are telling me, well, you'll probably never backbend again, but at least you'll be alive and you can, scale your practice back a little bit and do whatever you need to do. And I told them, okay, we'll see what happens. At that point, I just wanted to get through the surgery and I wasn't worried about too much else. But I think that, again, my previous years of practicing and movement and mindfulness and meditation helped me heal from that heart surgery very quickly. The doctors were actually very surprised because I had the surgery in May 2023 and I was back in the yoga studio by the end of July, early August. And I mean, I didn't push anything because my scar was still very sensitive. So anytime I tried to do a deep back bend, my chest felt like it was going to rip open. And so I'm like, let's do the least. Let's just get back into our bodies. Let's just try to feel good. Keep the practice very simple and see how my body progresses over time. And I think by September, it was back to normal. And it actually felt even stronger because now everything's operating at a high level, in particular my heart. So breath work, my practice in general, everything just felt stronger and felt so much better. And so it's been this constant roller coaster of I'm 100%, I'm full on doing everything I want to do with my practice, and then 100% to zero in less than a minute where I don't have a choice but to rest my body for whatever reason. At that time, it was heart surgery. Sometimes it's a flare. Sometimes it's some sort of inflammation or joint pain. And I have to honor that and respect it and find the balance and not get disappointed with myself. There were a couple of times where I tried to rush the healing process and I tried to take too much control over it. And then finally, one day, I woke up and I was like, why am I trying to force the healing process? I need to let my body recover, be patient with the process, be patient with the journey. And sure enough, I healed that much faster. So I finally started to let go of whatever my body was going through, let it run its course and be okay with it so that when I'm ready, I can actually get back into the studio and do my practice the way I want to do it. And there are some days where I practice and I just don't push it because I don't feel like it. My body doesn't feel like it, and that's okay. And then other days I'm like, oh, I feel like a rock star. Like, let me try to do everything and more. And so it's very much up and down. It's never the same. And I'm okay with that now. I think if you asked me that 10 years ago, I would not have been okay with it. But everything is different. And honestly, I'm just grateful to be able to get up every day, to take my first breath, to go teach my classes, and kind of live my life. So while I'd love to be practicing 90 minutes, 2 hours every day, it's just not physically possible. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think as humans, we just have to learn to listen to our bodies, never force anything, and just honor them as much as we can.
How did you find that pathway to acceptance? Because, like there is I think like there is a huge journey between like being like struggling, because I know like for instance, I know myself like how much I would struggle taking a rest day, even though like throughout the years now I've understood how much more efficient and how much better my practice is when I actually take a rest day. But emotionally it takes a lot, but also like when you have something that is so much rooted into your habits, that is so central into your life. And for you, for instance, like you've started ballet at such a young age, and then you've had movement about throughout your whole life. When your body is basically forcing you to slow down, how did you welcome this? And did you have like any other practices, like because yoga is wide, right? It's not just the physical practice. So did you have like mindful rituals or like journaling or things that you would do to really help you and heal that relationship with movement and non-movement?
Absolutely. Um, there was a time after I had a pretty bad flare in 2019, and I think just because of a lot of the issues that I had in the past, like losing my best friend and having those issues with alcohol, uh, I was in a place where I wasn't seeing the glass half full, but I was always seeing the glass half empty. And I decided, I literally remember it pretty vividly. I woke up one morning and I said, I need to change the way I think. I need to figure this out. There's no reason for me to feel like this. I have everything that I need in this moment, and I need to start thinking more positively. So I started getting back into my journaling, and I committed to journaling every single day. And I would remind myself to wake up, to be happy, to embrace everything, accept the challenges, and see the light in those challenges. And so from that point on, it became easier and easier the more that it became part of my routine. And in 2019, I did my teacher training with Jared McCann at Lighthouse Yoga School. And we spent about 3 weeks, a month, every morning meditating for 2 hours. I believe it was 2 hours. And those morning meditations were so transformative. And it was a habit that I held on to. And of course, life happens and things get busy. And let's face it, we don't always have 2 hours to sit and commit to meditating. But even then, I realized, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, just do something because it cultivated such a sense of peace and calm and just let me know that everything was going to be okay. And so I don't know if it would have been the same had I not gravitated so heavily towards journaling and meditating. But because I did, finding acceptance and understanding what that meant and being okay with the process and embracing the journey and not ever thinking, poor me, why me? So and so is doing this and so is doing that, but I'm laid up in a hospital bed. Like, why do I have to deal with this? It was like, no, she has her journey, he has his journey. I'm here now, I'm here for a reason, and I'm going to make the most of this. And so, especially when I had my heart surgery in 2023, I, shot all the content things. I packed my suitcase because it was the first time that I ever had time to plan for a big hospital visit. And I packed all the things that I love and I tried to make it fun. I try to make it an experience. I try to be happy about it and just embrace it. And I think without having that positivity and committing to journaling and meditating, I don't know if it would have been the same. I don't know if I would have been able to find such peace and acceptance and find the positivity within every situation. I apparently am very good at that. I don't see the dark side or the bad in anything that I do or in anyone. I always try to see the best in everyone and try to make, people come together, make everyone at peace and feel seen and heard. And I think all of that has so much to do with just finding different outlets when we can't embark on the things we love the most, being able to pivot and figure out how else am I going to take care of my mind, my body, and my soul. So for someone else, it could be painting, it could be anything. It could be reading, it could be writing, it could be sky gazing. I did that a lot in the hospital after my surgery because I wasn't like as mobile and kind of half out of it just because of medication. And so anytime that I was awake, I would just gaze at the clouds, watch them part, watch them move. And it was just so calming and so peaceful. I just knew that when I left that hospital, even though I was a bit frustrated with the tubes and everything that was inside of my body, that I was going to be okay and that I was going to make a full recovery because I wouldn't believe anything else besides the fact that I would make a full recovery. And it just, I don't know, all of those things really helped me foster a consistent practice of acceptance.
When and how did you realize that you wanted to teach yoga? When you took your teacher training, did you intend to become a yoga teacher? Because I know I personally, like when I took the teacher trainings, I did not even know that I could become a teacher afterwards. I just wanted to deepen my practice and, to be surrounded by a bunch of people who are passionate about the same things. I know it's different for everyone, but how was it for you?
Um, right before teacher training, I had just gotten out of the hospital, and right before my hospital stay, I actually had like a very bad episode with alcohol for a couple of months. And my parents were at the point where they're like, we're going to cut you off because we love you. And if you can't get your act together, like, we can't support you anymore. And so I looked at teacher training prior to my hospital visit, and I had emailed them and I said, hi, I am in a hospital bed right now, but I'm getting out on X day. And teacher training, I'm pretty sure started like the very next day. And anytime I leave the hospital, I always gain a little bit of fluid just from all of the steroid IV injections that they give me. And my parents were like, you need to go. They're like, we don't care if you're 1,000 pounds heavier or not. Like, you need to go. You need to do this. We think it'll be good for you. It'll be constructive. And so I went, and it was with one of my favorite teachers, Jared McCann. And I had no intention of teaching whatsoever. I just wanted to get back into a routine and find myself again and find productivity and find peace within myself. And at the beginning of teacher training, I felt so broken. I just didn't even know who I was anymore. I was a complete mess. My body didn't feel good. Nothing felt good. When we were practicing all of the different cues and stuff like that, I couldn't remember a thing. I was a disaster. But after we finished, we had our exam, and I don't know, I like committed to the practice. I committed to all of the assignments. I committed to the homework and just committed to the training itself. And when I finished, they told me that I had a gift for teaching, and I was like, I don't know about that. Like, like
Don't be like this.
I'm like, I'm just grateful that I finished and feel good and, have like a sense of purpose again. But I started to think about it after the training ended. I'm like, well, it's worth a try. I don't think I'll do it full time necessarily, but here we are. So, uh, I did like little practice classes and stuff like that. And in 2020, in March, I started teaching in studio in Brooklyn. And then the pandemic hit. And so I had to take whatever I learned and take it virtual, but just really didn't feel the same at all. Can barely see the people on the screen. It's like, how am I supposed to cue? I mean, you can cue things, but being on top of a laptop while trying to give adjustments or corrections, I should say, it wasn't my vibe. And so I just kind of stayed home during the pandemic with my parents and practiced teaching just by myself, which was a little bit awkward, but I made it work. And I honestly, at that point, I didn't really even think I would start teaching full time because I started working with Aloe then, September 2020. And I was spending a lot of time in California, like in 2020 and all of 2021. So I was like, oh, this feels like a fun life, I mean, it wasn't the reality, but I'm like, this feels great. And when I came back in 2022, a little bit more permanently, I was offered a teaching job for like this corporate fitness company. And I was like, well, I guess let's go for it. So I kind of just fell into teaching. I didn't really plan on it. And then after heart surgery, I was derailed again. I didn't work for an entire year. And so at that point, I really had no idea what I was going to do. And then I woke up one morning and I said to myself, why don't I go teach at Aloe? And so I reached out to whoever I needed to reach out to, and I started teaching there. And then it just kind of snowballed after that. So met Aloe, FP Movement, Chelsea Piers, Equinox, and I never in a million years thought I'd be on this teaching grind, teaching sometimes 4 or 5 classes in a day, running from Brooklyn to Upper West Side to Soho, back to Brooklyn, back to FIDI. It feels like such a grind and such a hustle, but every time I get into the room with my students, I am just elated. They bring me so much joy, especially the ones that have become regulars. They just keep coming back, and we are developing relationships, and it just feels so nice. It's a blessing in disguise, and I think, movement has been such an important component of my life in terms of my mental and physical health that I do believe it is the journey for me to kind of share my passion and share little nuggets of myself while teaching, just to keep people inspired and connected to themselves and motivated throughout their practice and throughout their journey. And to find people, coming back telling me that they enjoy my classes and they can see the progress and they can feel the progress. It's really rewarding in a totally different capacity that I never would have expected.
I love what you said about like how the online is such a different job. Like teaching online is such a different job than teaching in person. And also like when you're online, there's so many more responsibilities in terms of like tasks that you have to do. Like you have to create content, you have to shoot classes, you have to edit the classes, you have to make sure that the mic is on and all of that. And it's a lot of work that goes beyond just teaching. And I totally understand that for the people that started teaching before the pandemic, that it became like super overwhelming. And I don't know how you feel right now, but I feel like right now there is a shift, like post pandemic. Like I feel like we're in a transitional season right now where people are craving more in-person classes, more like human connection. As for teachers, like even like for myself, same as you, the thing that keeps me coming back online and like keep sharing tips and like my practice is because I know that at some point I'm gonna be teaching to these people and I'm gonna make a difference. But how much of a struggle it is to find that balance between the two, right?
It's so hard. And just like to your point, from online, there's so much to think about because you want to give that sense of, they're in your home with you or they're in the studio with you. And so to make people feel welcome and seen as well as heard, and just like you're fostering that deep connection even through online, it takes a really special individual to be able to do that. It's way harder than anyone thinks. And I mean, when you go into a yoga studio, everything's already set up. You can kind of just go, show up, do your thing, and you can leave. But what differentiates uh like in studio yoga teachers versus like in studio yoga teachers is like, some you work on getting to know your students. You actually take the time to give them those corrections and those adjustments and the pointers after class that make them feel seen and make them want to come back. And, as they continue to deepen their practice, it also kind of, in a sense, deepens their connection and relationship with you as a teacher. And I've been in so many classes where nobody gives you any corrections. They just teach the class, they're out the door, and it's like, well, did I do it right? Did I do it wrong? I mean, obviously, at this point, you and I have enough self awareness to know how to do, most of whatever we're doing. But for someone who's brand new to yoga, you can't just walk into a room and, say A, B, and C. They're going to look at you like, what? It's a foreign language. And it's discouraging. And more than anything, you want people to feel invited and like they want to come back to your class. So whether it's in person or online, it's all very difficult, and each realm has its own challenges.
How do you find the balance between your practice and teaching? Because I know you, so I know how much you are traveling around New York. Like basically, a day in the life of Victoria is basically traveling from America to Europe in 24 hours. literally. So how do you have time to practice if you do practice? I know you don't practice every day and you don't have to, but how do you like manage like the frustration maybe of not being able to practice as much as you would like, getting your matcha intake every day, and
Oh my
just
God.
being your full self for your students every time. I mean, I feel so grateful that I get to work from home like most of the time, and sometimes I'm even like struggling because I'm like I don't even have enough time in a day, and then I look at your schedule and I'm like, okay, if she can do it, I should probably be able to do what I have on my to-do list today.
It's sometimes it feels like a miracle that I even get through the day. And not every day is insane, but at least 3 or 4 days a week, it's, an early morning class, straight to the next studio, straight to the next studio. Maybe I'll stop home for a matcha because by a certain time, like I need my matcha, and I really hate spending money on matcha. So I try to find a time to like stop home, make my matcha, and like get back out on the road. But it's literally all day long and it's very just time consuming. It's really hard to be able to fit everything in because some days I wake up, I'm like, okay, I've got these 4 classes, and then I'm going to try to shoot content here, and then I'm going to try to fit my workout in here. And so, no, I do not practice every day. The days where I'm kind of stacked with classes back to back to back, I have started just doing some elliptical in between my classes. And I mean, they're not all at the same studio. So I'll do like a little elliptical, I'll teach, maybe a little more elliptical, and then I'll run to the next studio. If there's time, get a little more elliptical in, same thing. Or I'll just take like half an hour and just stretch because I need to be stretching a little bit more than I do. And then on the quieter days, the days where I have 3 or less classes, I get a full practice in. But it's very hard to figure it all out, and things are constantly changing, and people are always pinging you to kind of jump into a class for them. And of course, I could say no, I could set boundaries, but New York is a very expensive city to live in. So the more classes that you can get, the better. And while I would prefer to say no sometimes, I kind of just, you know, I say yes, period. That's really about it. So I wish I was practicing more, but I do at least make sure that I practice 4 times a week. And then I have to have one rest day, which doesn't really exist. I don't really have any days off. So I'll make sure there's at least one morning where I don't have an early morning class and where my first class might be at like 6 o'clock, like Wednesdays, for example. I only have one class on Wednesday. So Wednesday is my day to sleep in, have a little extra me time, get a true practice in, and then I'll teach my 6:45 class. And then come home and just go straight to bed because my next class on Thursday is at 6:45 a.m. So it's very challenging. I've definitely made the most of it. And each week is different, it really just depends. When I started this, I was like, okay, I'll just have a consistent schedule and that's it. And there's nothing consistent about my schedule ever. It is very different every week. It makes making plans with people very hard. It's a stretch for me to make plans with people now. It takes so much time and so much energy. And because I'm running around so much, when I do have a couple of hours, I just want to be home. I don't want to be anywhere. I don't want to be doing anything. And so, I mean, a lot of times I spend from, you know, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. on the road. So I'll carry all of my granola bars for the day or protein bars, throw them in my bag. I carry satchels of tea around. I'll make tea at the different studios if they have like a little canteen or what have you. If I must, I will buy a matcha on the street because I need my matcha. Otherwise, I won't survive the day. And and just really try to just breathe. There's no other way besides just breathe, keep going, keep myself motivated, keep myself encouraged, keep myself hydrated and nourished. Otherwise, if my energy starts to deplete, it's just a downward spiral from there. Hence, keeping all of the protein bars in my bag and whatnot. But it's not an easy thing, especially in New York with transportation, too. It's very unpredictable. One day it's working, the next day it's not. One day I missed a class because someone decided to jump onto the tracks and the train, I mean, obviously struck the individual, and so the service was terminated. And I was midway to studio and I'm like, I can't get there. And nobody could get there. It was just kind of a mess. So there's a lot of challenges, but I do my best to keep my practice in, again, at least 4 times a week, cardio in between classes when I can. And I have to keep practicing because I want to keep my students improving. And if I'm not practicing, I don't feel like I can do service to my students. And so, as hard as it is, I find the time. And I've actually just started rolling out my yoga mat in my kitchen slash living room area and started moving. I'm like, all I need is a mat. I don't really need much else, and I can do the rest. So you just kind of have to make it work. It's not easy, but if you believe in something and you want something enough, you'll figure it out.
I think that's the final sentence of this episode. I was about to say how inspiring, and I'm pretty sure it'll be so inspiring, and like the way you approach life and how like focused on your journey you are and on your goals and not letting either the limiting beliefs or even like whatever is happening in your life that is an obstacle prevent you from doing what you actually want to do. I feel like you're Wonder Woman, Victoria, honestly, because for all the things that you do, even like physically, it's a lot. And I've already told you that before. Like, I don't know how you handle so much like running everywhere and then practicing with such an advanced practice. It's very inspiring, truly.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I never, honestly, there was a time where I didn't know if I could make all of this work. And it has all come together, and it's not easy, but I would never step back into a corporate office again. I will never go back to finance or anything like that. And so I think when you commit to something and you know that this is your path, you you figure it out.
Love that. If people want to practice with you this year, whether they are online or offline, of course.
I would suggest you too, but she needs to get a little bit more consistent, so I will not do that. Well, I have my retreat in October, which is very exciting. October 8th to the 12th in Mexico. So that's shaping up to be a wonderful group of people, and it's going to be yoga in paradise and just a nice time to reconnect and rejuvenate and deepen your practice and yeah, just community. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a magical experience. And then if you're in the city, there's Equinox, Chelsea Piers. The schedule is very long and constantly evolving. But people should check out my website because I keep my classes linked there. So
I'll put all the links, Instagram, website of Victoria in the description so that you guys can have a quick access to her magic and have the daily shot of inspiration to show up every day whether in life or on your mat. Thank you so much, like 100 times. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and being so true and authentic to yourself. I'm sure you've inspired so many of us listening.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm truly honored that I was invited, and it's just a gift to be able to share the trials and tribulations and the ups and downs, and just let people know that you can come out on top as long as you fight for it. So